11 years. 11 years. That's how long it took to get a proper follow-up to Mario Kart 8. If you don't count Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which I don't. That is an enhanced port, if anything. Even if they did literally double the amount of tracks that are available, it's still built off the bones of Mario Kart 8. So for all intents and purposes, Mario Kart World is the true sequel that we've all been waiting for. And so now that we're more than 3 months removed from the launch of the game, just how well does it stack up? Does it actually somehow justify the over decade-long wait? Or having gone an entire console generation without a new Mario Kart entry? Or even the exorbitant price tag? Well, as I'm sure you could have guessed from the title, the short answer is no, it does not. But it's not from a lack of ambition. Clearly on some level, Nintendo knew that they had to justify the unusually long gap between Mario Kart 8 and 9. This couldn't just be yet another Mario Kart game. They had to pull out all the stops and deliver something truly unique. Otherwise, what was all that extra development time for? Were they just twiddling their thumbs?
I'm just like a little boy, playing with his dick when he's nervous.
Nintendo's solution? Go the open world route. I mean, why not? It certainly worked out for them before, and quite a few other developers as well. It seems no matter the genre or series, going open world is almost certainly a winning formula. Except this time, Nintendo may have bitten off more than they can chew, because Mario Kart World is simultaneously too ambitious and also not ambitious enough. Hopefully that sentence will make sense by the end of the video. And look, I know I'm far from the first person to make a Mario Kart World video essay, but they weren't from me, damn it. And while I more than likely will end up retreading some of the same ground that many have already gone over, I can almost guarantee that I have at least 1 or 2 new things to say that you probably haven't heard. So sit back, relax, and fasten your seatbelts, because you don't want to get pulled over by Reggie.
I gotta get back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on my Nintendo 3DS.
It's time for yet another critique of Mario Kart World. And wouldn't you know it, Nintendo actually went ahead and dropped a surprise patch while I was in the middle of putting this video together, version 1.3.0, and unfortunately for me, this is actually the biggest update that Mario Kart World has received so far. And the reason I say unfortunately is because most of my work was already done on this video when this patch dropped. But the silver lining, well, for me at least, is that this patch didn't really address any of my major criticisms. Well, except for one, kind of. But for the most part, the majority of my complaints go unaddressed. So I'm just going to go over the more notable parts about this patch right here off the top. And then we'll just go back to the rest of the video as is. Hopefully that all makes sense. Alright, so with all that preamble out of the way, let's briefly go over this patch. So our first change of note, and also probably the biggest, is that you can now play free roam with up to 2 players. And while this is definitely a nice addition, it also doesn't really fix the free roam, if you ask me. But it's still a nice feature to have. And next we have a bit of a quality of life improvement. Any P switches or Peach medallions that you've already collected will now be displayed for you on the free roam map. And I gotta say, it's a little odd that there was no way of keeping track of these before. Especially when considering you could already keep track of the question mark panels. But now you can keep track of everything, so that's something. And our next 2 adjustments are also tied to free roam. Are you noticing a pattern? So not only did they increase the appearance of the UFOs while in free roam, but they've also made it so that you now transform into any characters that you absorb with the UFO. And in case you were unaware, but transforming into a character is also how you unlock them. So I do have quite a bit to say about this, but I'll save it for later on in the video. And next up we have some balance adjustments. So apparently, item boxes will respawn even quicker now, as if the item spam wasn't somehow bad enough already. But they've also increased the invulnerability period after getting hit with an item, so maybe that'll just balance itself out. And then finally, Nintendo actually reversed a decision that was made in one of their previous patches, and that is that they've now increased the frequency of the lap type courses when selecting random, which they controversially had decreased the appearance of these in a previous patch. Now I don't really know if this is back to where it was at launch, or if this is just some sort of middle ground, but I'm not paying for Nintendo's shitty online service to find out, so I already regret buying the Switch 2 as it is. I'm definitely not giving Nintendo any more of my money, so you can acquiesce that information from another YouTuber. I'm sure there's more than 1 million videos on it already. But I think that about covers everything from this latest patch. At least all of the major things anyway. But anyway, back to our regularly scheduled program. So before I start rattling off a list of criticisms, why don't I actually go over some of the things that I do enjoy about Mario Kart World first. And to start off, this will probably come as a surprise to no one, but Mario Kart World both looks and sounds great. At a first glance, World may look very similar to Mario Kart 8, but it very much has a visual identity of its own. The characters here are even more stylized now than they were before, with a lot of the rough or hard edges sanded off, and the characters in general are just far more expressive, and they even dance at the character select screen, which makes me angry. And the sheer volume of different musical arrangements that can be found in this game is simply impressive. From Mario Odyssey to 64 to even the original Super Mario Bros. I haven't seen this level of effort go into a game's soundtrack since Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and it's definitely worth applauding. On top of both looking and sounding great, the game also has rock solid performance, without a frame rate hiccup in sight. This level of polish is a rare thing to find in the year of our Lord 2025, which in and of itself is a little depressing. Moving on over to gameplay, World delivers on that front as well, for the most part. World is very much in line with what you'd expect from just about any Mario Kart game, where player skill and mechanical complexity take more of a back seat to the randomized chaos that is the item roulette. But getting a proper handle on when and when not to drift, as well as track knowledge, will definitely increase your odds of success. Overall, Mario Kart definitely tends to lean more towards the casual side of things, but there's just enough skill involved to hook some more hardcore gamers as well. It's this delicate balance between RNG and actual player skill that makes Mario Kart so appealing to such a wide demographic. But unfortunately, Mario Kart World kind of screws this balance up. But we'll get back to that in a bit. For now, there's a few new mechanics to go over. Rail grinding is now a thing. Any rail that you spot while out on a race can now be used as a means of travel by hopping onto it out of a charged jump, which looks pretty goofy at first, but opens up Mario Kart World's tracks quite a bit and also paves the way for a bit more player expression. On top of rail grinding, you can also now drive on the surface of perpendicular walls, which sort of feels like a replacement for the anti-gravity sections in Mario Kart 8 that are now absent in World. But unlike in Mario Kart 8, there aren't designated wall riding sections. Instead, you'll have to go out of your way if you want to take advantage of this new mechanic, which personally I don't mind, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of other players will probably just end up ignoring it altogether, making wall riding feel a bit less integral than the anti-grav found in Mario Kart 8. But anti-gravity isn't the only mechanic missing in World, as underwater traversal has now been removed entirely, which are now replaced with above-water jet ski sections that are visually a lot less interesting and also just kind of boring, and as a result, just kind of feel like a downgrade. But most of the tracks don't even have a water section to speak of, so it's really not the end of the world, or Mario Kart World. So with all these new traversal options introduced, you might be wondering, which is the most optimal to get around then? Is it rail grinding, or wall riding, or maybe just tried and true drifting? Well, unfortunately, the answer is a little boring. Overall, driving in a straight line will beat out all other methods of travel. On straightaways anyway. Drifting, rail grinding, and wall riding can beat out just normal driving, but on a straightaway, the lazy route is also the most optimal, which in a normal Mario Kart game wouldn't be too much of a problem, but Mario Kart World in particular has quite a few straight lines, with little else in the way, meaning a lot of the cool new tech introduced in World isn't utilized nearly as much as it could, and overall, just kind of feels like a bit of an afterthought. So what's the deal then? Why are there so many straightaways in Mario Kart World? Well, the intermission tracks are the culprit, where at the start of each race, you have to physically drive from one track to the next, as the 32 tracks that can be found in World are all seamlessly connected in one giant open zone, giving credence to the World subtitle found in this latest Mario Kart entry. And while this may be impressive from a technical perspective, it's also the inherent root of most, if not all, of Mario Kart World's major problems, as Nintendo has seemingly gone out of their way to shoehorn the open-ended aspect of World at nearly every given opportunity. Instead of using the open world as a means of accessing new races or content, like in, say, Diddy Kong Racing, they've instead incorporated the overworld into the actual tracks themselves, which you can only imagine has had a massive negative impact on the actual design of these courses. Because when you see that little lap counter in the bottom left corner of the screen, you're not actually going to be racing all 3 of those laps on the track itself. Instead, you're going to be spending 2 out of those 3 laps driving to the track now. So whenever you select a track that you want to race on, you're only going to spend 1 of those 3 laps actually racing on the track that you selected. Because giant open world, it's going to take a while to get there, and we can't dare break up the seamlessness of this open world. Except that we can, because we just show you the results at the end of each race anyway, just kind of undermining the entire point of these courses being interconnected in the first place. And look, I'm not really one to mind if my opinion doesn't align with the masses. I mean, I like Dragon's Dogma 2 for crying out loud. But I gotta say, it feels pretty vindicating knowing that pretty much everyone universally agrees that these track intermissions were just kind of a bad idea. I could very easily envision an alternate timeline where I'm the only one noticing them or calling them out. It certainly wouldn't be the first time. But you didn't click onto this video to hear an opinion that you've already heard 1,000 times before. You want to hear a genuine Kino hot take. Well, I have exactly what the PhD Mario ordered. Do you want to guess what my favorite Mario Kart game is? Go ahead, I'll give you a second. And I'll even give you a hint. It's not Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or 64, or even Double Dash. Nope, it's Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U. And you might be thinking, isn't Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U just an inferior version of 8 Deluxe on the Switch? Well, it depends on your definition of inferior, because from where I'm sitting, the Wii U version of MK8 actually did a couple things better. Unlike the Switch version of MK8, where you can hold up to 2 items at the same time, the Wii U version only allowed you to carry 1, which if you haven't played Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U before, it might be kind of hard to imagine just how much this impacts the game's balance by just removing 1 item slot from each player, turning each race into much less of an item spam fest, and much more into a test of both skill and track knowledge, with just the occasional blue or red shell there to spice things up. This particular version of Mario Kart may lack some of the more unpredictable chaos that the series is known for, but it also provides a uniquely deliberate take on the tried and true formula, and is overall my preferred way to play, even if it is missing most of the DLC courses. But let's be honest, for every Waluigi pinball, there's at least 2 to 3 tour tracks, and nobody's missing those. So obviously then, I lament the direction that Nintendo took with 8 Deluxe, where the item spam is now doubled. And as you could probably imagine, this problem is even worse now in World. Because while Nintendo hasn't necessarily increased the item limit, they did up the amount of racers from 12 to 24, which means you're getting graped with items a whole lot more often. Although Nintendo must have known that doubling the amount of racers would also vastly increase the amount of item spam, because quite a few items have actually been nerfed. For example, bullet bills no longer have a hitbox, lightning only damages players in front of you, and even getting hit with normal items such as a green or red shell will no longer make you screech to a complete halt. Thus, you'll maintain some of your forward momentum. But even still, the item spam is far more prevalent now than it ever was before. If any game were to benefit from reducing the overall item limit, it definitely would have been World. But item balance isn't the only thing that upping the players from 12 to 24 has had a negative impact on, as the track design in general has taken a massive dip in terms of quality. And I'm not even talking about the intermissions, I mean the actual tracks themselves. A lot of the tracks this time around are just kind of easy. The roads are often very wide and open, more than likely to make room for the 24 racers. There are very few pits or hazards to fall in, and while the actual tracks may have more twists or turns than the intermissions, there aren't really any hard or difficult turns to make. Maybe not everyone remembers, but the Mario Kart games used to have at least a handful of difficult tracks. Banshee Boardwalk, Toad's Turnpike, Dino Jungle, which, funnily enough, is actually in World, It's a returning track in the game, but it's been neutered to the point where it's barely even recognizable. Nearly every single pit or hazard has been removed. This was one of the more challenging courses in Double Dash, but now it's just like every other track in World, or even Yoshi's Circuit. The amount of turns you have to make in rapid succession on that course is crazy. There's not anything near as white knuckle as that in World. Even Rainbow Road, while visually beautiful, is a complete cakewalk. I mean, I get that Mario Kart is targeted for a younger audience, but I don't think it would make little Timmy's head explode if there was at least a couple difficult tracks. It's like Nintendo tried as hard as they could to make this game as casual as possible, which is weird because Mario Kart is already pretty casual. I mean, yeah, you had tracks like Yoshi's Circuit or Dragon Driftway, but that's why the items exist, to bridge the gap between the skill ceiling and the skill floor. So whether you were good or bad at the game, you could still have fun. Mario Kart World feels like it's designed so that only bad players can enjoy it, or for players that simply don't care to get good. I don't enjoy almost any of the tracks in this game, and it's because they're all just kind of boring. It's like the series has been infantilized. I mean, you can't even manually hold items behind you anymore. It's now just done for you automatically. And unlike the auto steering or auto accelerate that you can choose to either turn on or off, there's no way to disable this feature and have it play like the older games. And I get that it might sound weird to hear a guy or an anthropomorphic cat complain about a casual game being casual, but that's exactly my point. Mario Kart was already casual. It didn't need to be even more so. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was already the best-selling game on the Switch the way it was. I wasn't exactly crazy about them upping the item limit, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was still a very good game. I don't understand why Nintendo dumbed this game down to the point that they did. There's not a doubt in my mind that the game wouldn't have sold just as well if they had simply maintained the challenge where it was already at. I know it's becoming an increasingly popular thing to say that Nintendo is becoming the Disney of video games, and I'm kind of starting to see where these people are coming from. This dumbing down or oversimplification of Mario Kart really feels like Nintendo is just trying to rake in as many non-gamers as they possibly can, instead of, appealing to their already pre-existing audience that are more than willing to buy their games as they currently are, as long as they don't keep raising their prices maybe. And that's probably another thing worth talking about. The actual price of this game, $80 US, $10 more than the current $70 MSRP, which is already $10 up from the previously established $60 MSRP. That's a lot to ask for a Mario Kart game, or really any game. I don't know if I've played a single game in the past 5 years that would have justified an $80 price tag, let alone a kart racer of all things, even if I do love this genre. So if I don't think Mario Kart World is worth $80 then, you may be curious as to why I purchased it. Well, that's because I didn't. And I imagine most people who own this game didn't either, because Nintendo themselves created a loophole for buying this game, as the full game comes with the Mario Kart Switch 2 bundle, and this bundle is only $50 more than just the Switch 2 by itself, effectively making the game only cost $50. So if I and most others acquired the game for just $50, it begs the question, why did Nintendo bother charging $80 for this game in the first place? Most of Mario Kart World sales are going to be made through the Switch 2 bundle, meaning they're going to see little to no benefit from that extra $30 that the game costs when you buy it separately. I guess what I'm trying to say is, charging $80 for this game only served as bad optics for Nintendo. I mean, it's always going to be bad optics for a company whenever they arbitrarily raise their prices, but the trade-off is that they at least see more financial benefit. Like, oh yeah, a small portion of our user base now hates us, but at least we have more money, right? But with Nintendo, more people hate them and they aren't even any more financially better off. It makes no sense. I don't know, maybe this is like a 4D chess move in order to get people to buy more Switch 2s by buying the Mario Kart World bundle. But even then, I still would have gotten the bundle if Mario Kart World had cost $70, because that still would have been $20 that I saved. No matter what angle I look at it, Nintendo stood nothing to gain by charging $80 for this game. Just an all-around baffling Nintendo decision.
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Alright, so why don't we bounce back and talk about the open world again for a little bit. And more specifically, I'd like to go over the game's free roam option, where you're completely free from the restraints of the Grand Prix or Versus format, and you can choose to explore Mario Kart World's map as you see fit. And while this admittedly is a pretty novel feature at first, it very quickly loses its luster. There are 3 main collectibles to find while exploring free roam: question mark panels, peach medallions, and P-switches. The question mark panels are panels on the ground that you have to drive over. The peach medallions function as a coin or any other item where you just have to drive into them. And the P-switches are the most involved out of the 3, where you have to complete some sort of challenge whenever you activate one, typically involving collecting a set amount of blue coins. And so, what exactly do you get for collecting these? Well, for collecting the first 10 of each type of collectible, as well as completing Special Cup under 150cc, you unlock Mirror Mode. And after that, not a whole lot else. For each collectible you find while out in the open world, you are awarded 1 sticker. And that's it. And keep in mind, there are 394 P-switches, 200 peach medallions, and 150 question mark panels. And again, outside of collecting the first 10 of each, your award for collecting these are just stickers, which you can only equip 1 of at a time anyway. Calling the stickers redundant would be an understatement. They're beyond redundant. They're utterly pointless. Nintendo really took the time to craft this giant open world and forgot to fill it with anything worthwhile to collect. Mario Kart World stickers give the Korok seeds from Breath of the Wild a run for their money. And honestly, that's not even fair to Breath of the Wild. At least the Korok seeds have an actual practical use. Expanding your inventory at least serves some sort of purpose. The stickers literally don't do anything. And the even more frustrating part about all of this is that Mario Kart World already has worthwhile unlocks that they could have used in place of the stickers. Hidden characters, character costumes, and new karts are all things that you already unlock in the game, but none of which are unlocked through the actual open world. New vehicles are unlocked by collecting coins, which is how it worked in Mario Kart 8. Character costumes are unlocked by collecting food, which can be collected in the open world but can also be obtained in any of the other game modes, so why bother? And named characters are unlocked by completing cups in the Grand Prix.
Whoa, Jesus Christ, it's so fucking hot!
And non-named characters or enemies can be unlocked through the Kamek item, which has to be the single most bafflingly stupid unlock method for any game ever. And that might sound a bit harsh, but I promise you it's not. Let's go ahead and break this down. The Kamek item is a new item introduced in Mario Kart World that, when used, turns the players in front of you into random enemies. So let's say you get turned into a Cataquack. You then unlock the Cataquack as a playable character. The problem here is that not only is the Kamek item a rare item, but also you yourself cannot be the one that uses the item. You have to instead rely on other players to use it on you, be it a computer or a real person, making the entire process unnecessarily RNG dependent. So if there's a specific character or enemy that you want to unlock, you're going to be relying on RNG on top of RNG, which, for the majority of the roster, isn't necessarily the worst thing ever. But again, when you're trying to unlock a specific character, it quickly grows frustrating. And what makes this unlock method even more baffling is that Nintendo had a perfect alternative sitting right underneath their nose. That giant open world that's lacking in the way of any meaningful rewards. Call me crazy, but I feel like a lot of players would feel far more motivated to go out and find peach medallions if they rewarded you with something actually worthwhile, like say dolphin or cow. That's certainly a whole lot better than over 1,000 different PNGs. Mario Kart World has many of the fundamental building blocks for a truly satisfying open world, but unfortunately, none of these elements come together in a cohesive way, and overall, feels underwhelming. Tachunga from the future here. I'm awkwardly cutting in at the end of this video because Nintendo actually addressed this bafflingly stupid unlock method with this latest patch, in that you no longer need to rely on the Kamek Orb to unlock characters, as you can now instead unlock characters by using the UFO while in free roam. And if you're at all unfamiliar with what the UFOs even are, or that they even existed in the first place, then allow me to elaborate. So, while exploring the free roam, you may occasionally come across a UFO. And if you do happen to come across one and you drive into its tractor beam, You'll then be pulled into the UFO and you can take full control of it. Now, before this latest patch, this didn't really serve a purpose. It was kind of just something cool that you could do. But now with version 1.3, you'll transform into any characters that you pull in with the UFO. And coincidentally, transforming into a character is also how you unlock them. So yeah, this effectively replaces the Kamek Orb. And good riddance, I say. Now, the only real problem with this method is that you actually have to go out and find a UFO. But clearly Nintendo also realized this because they've also increased the encounter rate of spotting a UFO, making this pretty much an overall net positive for the game. And you can even exploit this method with a second player. If a friend of yours already happens to have a character that you want to unlock, you can go into free roam with them and suck them up with the UFO, transforming you into your character of desire. Just don't forget to say no homo after. Overall, this does more or less fix Mario Kart World's RNG problem when trying to unlock a specific character, but at the same time, it also kind of feels like a band-aid solution. Like, this was never meant to be the intended way to unlock the vast majority of the character roster, and there's any number of ways that this could have been implemented better. You could have unlocked characters by obtaining a set amount of collectibles, as I stated earlier, or maybe having to beat the character you want to unlock in a race, or maybe some of them could have been unlocked through an adventure mode? I mean, seriously, why doesn't Mario Kart World have an adventure mode or at least some sort of single-player campaign? We've been stuck on the Grand Prix format since Mario Kart's inception. Now seems like as good a time as ever to shake things up and implement a mode like this. It's time for Nintendo to actually bring the Mario Kart series forward, and a half-baked open world just isn't gonna cut it. Well, I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say about Mario Kart World, and it seems like so has everyone else at this point. I mean, this video was more or less just beating a dead horse, but I still wanted to make this video because, believe it or not, Mario Kart 9 was actually one of my most anticipated games of the year. I know 3D platformers and kart racers are not taken all that seriously. They're often viewed as lesser games, and whether there's any merit or validity to that doesn't matter too much to me, because I grew up playing games like these, and I still have a blast playing them. And I was hoping that Mario Kart World would be the next kart racer that I'd pour hundreds of hours into, but well less than 6 months later, and I just kinda wanna go back to Mario Kart 8. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way, which is definitely not a good long-term sign for Mario Kart World, and probably not at all what Nintendo had hoped for their next big blockbuster title, which is a shame, because I believe there's actually a lot of potential for an open-world kart racer. I envision an adventure-style Mario Kart game akin to Diddy Kong Racing, only on a much larger scale, and not limited by the restraints of the N64 hardware. A game that actually innovates on the genre and feels like a genuine leap forward. But unfortunately, Mario Kart World is not that game. It's an adventure game without any adventure. It's a racing game that doesn't seem to want you to race, favoring long and drawn-out straightaways and intermissions, instead of thoughtful and well-crafted tracks that actually feel designed to be raced on. And combine that with the fact that the item spam is worse now than it ever was before, and more than ever, Mario Kart World feels more and more like a party game, and less so an actual kart racer, which, if that's what Nintendo wanted, then I guess they kind of succeeded. But for me at least, Mario Kart World is just a waste of potential, and makes for a pretty poor excuse for the first ever $80 video game. So with all this in mind then, I unfortunately cannot recommend Mario Kart World, as it falls well below the $80 asking price in terms of both content and quality. It is a slightly better deal with the Switch 2 bundle, but then you have to buy an entire console just to play Mario Kart. If the game itself isn't worth $80, then it's definitely not worth buying an entire system for either. You're far better off just playing Mario Kart 8 on your Switch 1, because no, I'm not going to recommend you go out and find a Wii U to play Mario Kart 8 on. 8 Deluxe is perfectly fine, and is honestly probably the better option for most people anyway. Well, normal people. Unless there was a potential third option.
We all know that kart racing game. It's great, we don't need to show it to you. But what if you can blast through and race on a whole nother level? What if you could warp across different dimensions, fully customize and build out your machine, and compete head-to-head across different platforms? Or, what if you want to roam around on the open road?
Well, you know it's bad when even Sonic is taking shots at Mario. R.I.P. in peace, you fat Italian piece of...